Alikhan joining us tonight here for the premiere of Prospect's new Vision series, Musicals on Film, Lady APSARA. I'm Cara Reichel. I'm the producing artistic director of Prospect Theater Company, and I'm so thrilled to be here on Zoom tonight with our core creative team for this film to celebrate their work on this project and also to hear a little bit about their artistic process. I'm also so excited to introduce and welcome Joel de la Fuente, who will be our moderator for this Q&A. Joel is an actor whose work bridges the worlds of film and theater. You may recognize him from his work on the Amazon series, The Man in the High Castle, or for his Drama Desk nominated work on stage across the country doing the one-person play, Hold These Truths. For his bio and the bios of everyone involved with the film, you can click the link in the video info and visit Prospect's website to get those details. Joel, thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you take over and kick it off with questions for our group.
Well, first of all, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I would like to congratulate everyone on a fantastic premiere. It is so wonderful to see new work being presented during these unique and challenging times in such new and innovative ways. So genuinely, kudos to you all. I have to say that if there was one word that I could use to describe the experience for me in watching your piece, it was delight. I was so delighted, not just by the spirit of the piece and just the quality of it, but just, you know, I had an expectation, you know, that we've all been spending these past few months gathering virtually in these places and feeling in a way sort of compromised, like we're going to have a compromised theatrical experience. And what you all did, I feel so successfully, was to try to find a new way, to try to embrace this time and to see how you could use this technology with the limitations that you had and to turn those limitations into strengths. And so I just found myself with my mouth open from the very opening moments. I mean, just the vibrant colors and just the ambition of everything you guys were going for. We're so eager to hear what that experience was like, how you found those things to embrace and to push. So let's start off with the writing team. Naveen, let's start with you. So Prospect's Vision series films are an interesting hybrid of theater performance and filmmaking. Did that affect how you approached the writing of the script or not? And what was your way into this commission?
You know, it's weird. I really didn't think about that while I was writing at all. My approach was really just from inside the story and the subject matter, which was basically an exploration of an actor going through a series of sort of microaggressions over the course of her regular day and how to navigate that situation where, you know, the actor wants so badly to impress the people she encounters, but is being misinterpreted by all of them and can't really reach them. And that was my focus and approach.
Well, I've had the privilege and honor of knowing your actor, Angel Desai, for many years. And I couldn't help but think as I was watching, you know, your story and what I know of her story seemed to coalesce in such interesting ways. So Angel, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what was that process, you know, for you, Naveen, and also for you, Angel, because how did you collaborate on the writing of this? Because it seems like there was a lot of collaboration happening and a lot of sharing back and forth.
It's funny. I mean, the process was so fast, and we had, was it two conversations that maybe, or one? I can't even remember, but it wasn't more than two, I think, like before we had a draft of the script.
Wow.
And Naveen was under all this pressure to get drafts out and finalize drafts so that Kamala could write the music because she was waiting to write the music till there was a draft. And all of this was like pushing up against the time when we were supposed to go and film it. So it was just like, and we didn't have a cast. So there's all this. So in those one or two conversations, it was actually before Naveen and Kamala came on board, Cara and I were talking about what we might, you know, what would this film be? What were some of the things I was interested in? And dual identity was one of the things that came up. So that phrase, dual identity, got shared, I believe through Cara with Naveen and Kamala. And then we discussed that, and then Naveen came up with the idea. She's like, what if you're an actor? what if you're going on these auditions? And so there was this thing of like, well, I play the violin, I sing, sometimes this happens. She knows my ethnic identity, she's known my ethnic identity. So like, you know, and we were aware this was taking place in Binghamton, which is my hometown. So there was that aspect. So I feel like in a very short, fast time, all of these things, Naveen kind of synthesized so much stuff that from knowing me from the past, but also from that like one or two conversations right
So,
before. Is that fair to say, Naveen? Is like I feel like it was so fast.
It did all happen super fast, and I think both Kamala and I said at some point, I remember Kamala saying something like, I didn't know that I could do that. Like, so, like, in a weekend, you know? Yeah, I think that's fair.
well, so Kamala, so tell us, where does your process fall with this? Because clearly, I mean, are you sitting in the room at the same time these conversations are being had? And when does your process of writing begin? How do you know when to start? And, you know, how did that all work?
Well, this process was interesting because, you know, normally you can at least meet each other, but I've never met Naveen in person. We've only seen each other in these little boxes, so I don't even know if she has a body. I've only seen her head. So that's what's been funny about it is, you know, I really am somebody who likes to work from the text. I don't like to write music until I know where the text is going. I come from opera and classical music also, and so the idea of dramatic through line in the music is very important to me. So I was part of these early conversations, but then while I was starting to think about what the music could be and what the musical styles might be, I didn't actually start to work on them until there was a draft. So all of these songs were written over the course of a weekend, really.
Wow. Is that a first for you? I mean, to have this much output over such a short period of time?
Yes.
And what is that like? I mean, do you find that it's easy to sort of let it go and to sort of embrace it, you know, that it's part of a very specific kind of a process, or was it sort of an inner war with, you know?
It was an inner war, but, you know, I think that we're all learning in COVID, and for me, maybe this was a process of letting go of some of my neuroses a little bit and just saying, okay, well, that's it. That's got to be good enough because it's got to be done. So.
Well, as an outside viewer, I have to say, I think I think that you should let that go because it was absolutely good enough.
Thank you.
So now, Zai, so as the director, I have so many questions as a director, because first of all, so much of your focus in the past has been as a theatrical director, right? A director of plays and musical plays. And so
yeah.
Have you directed in front of a camera before? Like,
this was my very first time, and the first scene in the play after the opening number was the first time I'd ever had to be behind a camera. I'd ever had to have a DP in the room. I'd ever had a lighting designer with reflectors. I'd ever had any of those things happening. And it was hilarious. I think if you were to ask any of the 6 or 8 people that were in that room, like, how farcical was it? It was like pretty farcical how funny that first time was. But it was an incredible experience. Just from the very beginning, it felt like there was nothing but support from every angle, every direction you looked in. There was so much support. I've said this to Angel so many times that she's like my aunt in this industry, that like she is somebody that I've looked up to since I was a teenager, and somebody who
Big sister.
Big sister. She's like my big sister. I was gonna like cool young. And it's like my big sister in this industry, in the sense that seeing her name, I tell her this all the time, that seeing her name, you know, on playbill.com when I was in high school, when I was in college, was the reason I knew that I had a place in this industry. And Kamala and I met 2 summers ago now, 2 summers ago, doing a project at Lincoln Center.
What is time, Zai?
Yeah, what is, I have no idea anymore. But I have been such a lingering fanboy of her and her band Bombay Ricky ever since. And Naveen and I got to meet right at the top of this process. Again, we've never been in a room together, so I'm also not sure if she has a body, but Naveen, you're
I, I'm sure she has a body because I have met Naveen on many occasions.
Okay, Cara can tell us that. Cara can vouch, but Naveen was just so unbelievably generous, and receptive is a silly word to use, but so generous with how she was able to take this story that came from her mind and kind of interact with all of our collaborative ideas. And so going into filming, having already had the generosity of spirit from these three and from Cara and from Prospect, which is a company that I have been, again, dying to be a part of since I moved to New York 13 years ago. You know, like we got to get together in this room in Binghamton, which was also really scary because none of us had been in the space before our first day. And so we really, like, there were a lot of quick decisions that had to be made. But everywhere I turned, there was support from every angle. There were people who were doing things for the first time, people who were doing things for the 15th time, but there was just like bucket loads of patience and kindness and generosity, and everybody wanted everybody else to succeed, which was a really, really special thing.
Well, I have to just say that it just blows my mind that you hadn't directed anything for a camera before, because it's all, this whole medium is visual, and the way that you were able to help tell the story that Kamala wrote the music for, that Naveen wrote, it was inherently cinematic in all the ways that one would need. And it really was, I mean, just the way the whole thing opens, you know, the way she sits up into frame and you start moving with her right away, I was just like, oh, wow, we're off and going, you know. And
I just want to say that I just have to tell people that was a solve that Zai came up with in a day. I watched him do it. Because we were talking one day, the whole thing was 3 days, like 1 day of rehearsal and recording, like that's it. And then filming for half a day, and that was it. And from one day to the next, there was, how are we going to shoot? The opening number has all these references to like a shower and getting dressed, and do we do it realistically? And the time crunch was like this. The COVID guidelines are so strict. So we realized, oh shoot, we have 2 hours less shooting time during the day than we would have had. And the wheels, I watched, it's like I could see them even though I wasn't around him overnight or whatever. And suddenly, within less than a day, he had this idea, oh, I get it. We're just going to film it all like that, from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene. I mean, and then it happened within less than a day. It was so, he can think on his feet like few people I've ever seen do. I just wanted people to know that.
Can I just jump in and say that that's also so theatrical? Like that's what's really cool about the way that this film turned out, is it's not just a film, it's a theater film. Like you could see that happening on a stage, but here it's like it's framed really well, but it could work just as a play also. It like if you did the same thing on a stage, which is just, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool. We were really lucky that we filmed ours the week after Cara had directed her Vision series submission. So we got to get so much residual knowledge from her going into this. Really, I personally did. And she really encouraged me to think about this as a theater piece, and really think about as a theater piece with enhancements. It's like, you know, in the theater, you can't see it this way, but how would you like to see it if you had your dream way of seeing this in the theater? And that was a really good, you know, that was like the Rosetta Stone into figuring out how to do this thing that I know how to do, and this thing that I'd never done before, and figuring out a way to get from point A to point B. The other thing that was really cool that it reminded me a bit like the timing and like all of our, you know, our quick, you know, make a decision, throw the design up, get the blocking in, do it all. I had a small, like tiny little theater company in New York City about 10 years ago. And it reminded me so much of what it was like to be producing in a very quick and a very a very thoughtful and yet without the luxury of time kind of way. I find that when those are the situations that I find myself in, creativity just blossoms in a pretty crazy way. So I felt so unbelievably like I was like firing. I couldn't go to bed on our nights. Like we would get home at 10 or 11 p.m. and I wouldn't go to bed until like 3 o'clock in the morning because I was so excited and I had been thinking about so many ideas for the next day. And so I'm just so really grateful to Prospect for the gift that was this opportunity to try this.
Now, a few of you have mentioned the space and, you know, the 3 days in the space. Talk a little bit about it, because it's a very specific place with a specific history. And maybe you all have different relationships to this place. I know, Angie, you know, you being from Binghamton, I'm sure you have a very specific, first tell us where it is and tell us what it's about. And it just seems like all of you might have it's like another character in this piece, right? So.
It is. When it comes to actually talking about the theater, I will actually defer to Cara because, as I've said to her a few times, she knows more history about theater in my hometown than I do. She knows so much. But yeah, so the Goodwill Theater is a theater in my hometown, which is Binghamton, although Binghamton consists of a bunch of different townships. And Johnson City is the township in which Goodwill Theater is, so that's one of them. And I had never actually worked there. I was, you know, as some of you know, there was not, first of all, not a lot of theater opportunities for kids, but also I was doing a lot of music and I was supposed to be becoming a doctor. So that, you know, that wasn't really, my growing up was not about doing lots of theater as a kid. And so I forget, Cara, you'll probably know why, but the actual space, so there's two spaces. There's the firehouse building, which is where a lot of it was shot, and that is where the theater is now. Today's sort of black box space is now. But then there's the old theater that the final scene of the movie is in, where the seats have all been ripped out. But that's 100 years old this year. Am I right about that, Cara?
Yeah, I'm lucky that Prospect actually has had a relationship with the Goodwill Theater for over a decade, and we've gone up there a number of times for sort of, it's about 3.5 hours away from New York City, so it's like a place that's a good destination if you want to get away from the city for a week and work on a new piece. And the theater has been really supportive in their mission of, you know, hosting us and developing work with us. And so over the summer, actually in July, when, you know, it became clear that we weren't going to be able to go back to live performance in the fall, I reached out to Naima Krajan, who's the CEO of the theater. And, you know, just sort of, I knew that she had this historic theater, which can't accommodate an audience right now because it hasn't been renovated. But the idea of this sort of architectural jewel that can't have an audience and artists who need a space, but also audiences coming in to see it isn't really an option right now. It seemed like a good marriage for this particular moment. And so it was through talking with her that the idea of these whole film series came up. And, you know, I'm so grateful to everyone on this team for like saying yes and just being game to jump in, because I think, you know, the tightness of the time frame had to do with when it was going to be possible for us in terms of like the weather and things, and the time that the theater had to be there in Binghamton. And then when we researched all the, you know, the guidelines that we needed to follow for safety, it was about creating this 72-hour bubble, which is where the 3-day film shoot situation came in. So anyway, the theater was part of the writing prompt in a sense that, you know, I think I sent Naveen some photos of that space. And I think the way that she conceived of using that as a departure from our everyday reality, because in a way it was a weird departure for us from our everyday reality. We were all able to escape into this other world and this space for a few days to make art. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting space, and it was originally built 100 years ago for the people in the community there for vaudeville shows.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The Angie, you mentioned it, that
What's that?
you talked a little bit about dual identity. Um,
Oh,
and I, if I could, I'd just like to ask each one of you to just respond a little bit to what your, however you want to really respond to it. Just, because as artists, as Americans, as artists of color, we're constantly dealing with, maybe not even just dual identities, but there's just the multiple hats that we have to wear, sometimes simultaneously, as we negotiate our lives in the country, within our communities, and everything else. You deal with it so specifically and wonderfully in this piece, but just as artists now, I'd just be curious to hear you talk a little bit about what it is to juggle identity for you.
hmm. Yeah, that is a great question. I actually, as part of the lead up to this, I actually wrote an op-ed for American Theater magazine. It's about my name, actually, specifically because Apsara is my real name, although Angel is how people know me, and it's about that. But you're right, Joel, because there's the dual identity because my dad is Indian, my mom's Filipina. There's also, I think, a lot of us that are first generation or second generation Americans understand is that if our parents emigrated from someplace, the identity of the cultures and the traditions that our parents know and grew up with and growing up as American kids. So there's that kind of dual identity as well. Um, there's there's the aspect of being, for myself anyway, being an actor and a musician.
Hmm.
And then the thing that all actors have to do, which is that we are us, and then there's a character, and then that is the marriage of the character and us. So yeah, there's a lot of different resonances for me with this, but I'm really grateful to Naveen for sort of picking up, especially on we talked about being Filipina, being Indian, even within the Asian community,
Hmm.
has also actually can be problematic because even within the community, they're like, I don't really know what to do. So
Yeah.
I always talk about as a first generation American, if you go into, or at least many Indian fridges that I've been in, if you like open the fridge, you'll see like old yogurt containers and old margarine containers and like all kinds of like Tupperwares and reused containers that are filled with leftovers. And I always talk about that the first generation experience feels like opening a fridge and having two very distinct sets of Tupperwares. Like one that's like a very traditional set of Tupperware and one that's all like old yogurt containers full of like old curry. And that there's a very skillful dance that I think a lot of first generation Americans do, where we know what Tupperware to open when. And we know exactly like what needs to open and what needs to close in order for that to open, and what situations we can be in and open this Tupperware. Literally, my brother has a story of bringing like I don't even remember, some Indian food to lunch as a second grader, and like being so mortified opening his lunch that he told my mom he would never do it again. And so anyway, we know how to open these Tupperwares when. There's a very distinct kind of code switching, I think, that happens in the first generation American identity. And we're really good at it. And we're so good at it that by this point, many of us don't even know we're doing it. And it really comes out in ways that we don't even recognize all the time. The way we talk, how we walk, how we're dressing, all of those things. And in this giant reckoning that our country's going through with race at this moment, it's been incredibly important for me personally, and I think I can maybe speak for all of us, to think about how the myth of the model minority has really played into how I was raised and how my parents taught me to act, and how that impacted my educational trajectory and where that got me today, and how I'm pretty darn okay at going in for a job interview in a way that I understand as a product of the privilege of being able to have a life of being able to know which Tupperware container to open at which time. So that's how dual identity is like most prevalent for me. So it was really cool to even in tiny ways think about that when we were making this.
Amazing. Naveen, you talked a little bit about pizzas in the piece, which is such a wonderful way to address the problem artistically and whimsically, because we can laugh when we watch that in recognition or just, getting in the metaphor maybe for the first time, but we're able to grasp a concept that is very hard for the character who's going through it. We're able to grasp it because you're able to do so in a humorous way, which is often a great bridge to get us to a place where we can start to understand things that might be harder to grasp because they're painful. So can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like managing different identities?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for that. I think we all come with not just our ethnic background, but so many different identities and different categories of being a human person. And people very much, if you do anything that kind of is outside of their expectations of the categories that they're aware of that you fit into, there's a lot of resistance to it. And especially as a writer, I have sort of two sets of plays. One, can be defined as my sort of identity plays, and the others are my non-identity plays. And, people really want, if you write an identity play, they want it to tell a certain story. And if there's any departure from that, and I feel like there should be a departure from people's expectations, otherwise there's no point in telling that story. People have heard it already. But if there's any departure from that, there's a lot of resistance and a lot of questioning of whether it's even a real experience. And, I've gotten that from playwriting teachers, from other writers, from directors, from actors, like, oh, is this really realistic? Would, my family's Bangladeshi. Would a Bangladeshi family really curse this much? Yeah, they would, So there's sort of a constant having to defend what your experience is. And also, when you write a non-identity play, people want to know why. They want some kind of a justification for, well, I don't see why this character has to be South Asian. They're not doing anything specific. Can we cast someone else? No, you can't. Because, I don't wake up every morning thinking, oh, I'm a South Asian woman eating my breakfast. I think I want a poppy seed bagel today. That's not true. Can we change that? I would want an everything bagel.
This is the one day in your play that your character had the poppy seed. That's she's allowed to choose that one of the days.
Yeah, and so people really want a justification for, why is this person, why are you portraying a person who fits this category without showing me the tropes and features of what I believe this category entails. So there's a lot of having to explain and defend, and it's exhausting, and it's also, it's the world we're all navigating.
Do you think, where do you see this going? Is this a battle? This is a slightly different battle, you could even say. Well, Zai, you had made mention of something earlier and about a first generation experience, with Tupperware versus, and I was thinking to myself, the battles of one generation versus another, like our parents' challenge versus ours, and then our children's and our children's children, and how, it's like, does the third generation think about these Tupperwares, or are they like, well, what are you talking about? Like, it's like, I like to put all my stuff together, and maybe they're on to the next thing. So when you talk about, Naveen, the things that these issues, these exhausting issues, do you see us making progress right now? And is this something that is the battle of of this generation? And hopefully, are we fighting different battles in the future? Or, you know what I mean? And how do you see it trending now? Like, do you see the possibility for change?
I do see the possibility for change. I do think we're sort of in a period of, it's going to get worse before it gets better. you know, that's sort of part of the rehearsal process where it feels like, oh, 2 weeks ago we understood this play better than we do now. But eventually you'll get there, but it's going to get complicated and murky on the way. And I think, you know, a lot of this play on film is about a feeling, a desire right now to be more inclusive and to represent all kinds of stories from all kinds of points of view. And while that desire may be sincere and genuine, the approach to it is more often than not problematic, because we've all lived, you know, all of us have been living in this Eurocentric, white supremacist worldview, patriarchal worldview. And it's hard to escape because we've never, you know, the people who want to live in to see a world of, you know, equity and fairness and inclusion don't necessarily know what that means. And so there's going to be, I think, a lot of learning and listening and processing and a lot of making mistakes, I think. At the same time, I feel really hopeful. You know, I have a nephew who is 17 and a niece who's about to be 13, and I think they live in a really diverse suburb. They grew up in the same town that I grew up in, which is now a lot more diverse than it was when I grew up. And so they're very used to, you know, being around other people like them who have their experience and who have, who come from a lot of dual identities or triple identities. And so they don't feel so sort of othered in the same way that my generation did. And I think there's a lot of hope in that. And I hope that, you know, I like to believe that the world will be a more inclusive place as they come of age.
I want to like take a second to just beat my drum about something that I always beat my drum about, that I worry that if we don't start to practice radical inclusivity right now, that we're going to continue to miss generations of stories, that we are going to, it's crazy to look at my parents' generation of South Asian people. There are no plays in the Western canon about my parents' generation of South Asian people. And I am a part of a generation who has grown up not seeing South Asian people direct. You know, there are 5 of my contemporaries, and I believe with all of my heart that one of us will be the first South Asian person to ever direct on Broadway. I'm getting choked up saying that. And it's 2020. And that is a crazy, crazy thing. And if we don't act fast, I see our stories being directed by people who are not us all the time, being written by people who are not us all the time. And if we don't act quickly, I'm sitting here in a room with 3 women of South Asian descent, and there was no way I wasn't going to say yes to this project. If I had to fly across the country, if I had to, you know, swim across an ocean, I would have said yes to this project, because I sit here with 3 South Asian women telling the story about a South Asian and East Asian person, or South Asian, Southeast Asian person. And that is important, because if we don't start doing that, if we don't start practicing that radical inclusion right now, our generation is going to also miss the opportunity to do that. And while, like Naveen, I have nieces who are 15 and 13 and are half Indian, and I'm really excited when I see what their world looks like. I don't want them to have to wait to be the first generation to see themselves on stage, on film. And there are so many incredible South Asian artists who are practicing theater across America, across the world. There are too many to not let this be a moment. So I encourage everybody to be loud and to beat your drum and to say, this is a space for me, and this is a space that I want to occupy.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Zai. Kamala, do you have anything you'd like to share about any of it, dual identities, or how what the process is like, also because through music specifically, a lot of the time people don't see the way you look really initially, right? So that's an interesting place to be too, because it's so many of the same issues, so many of the same life experiences. You're dealing with a lot of the same weird dynamics when you're looking for work and they're looking at you in that way. But when they hear your work, they're hearing it first and they don't necessarily see you. So I just find that to be such an amazing, specific, you know, as it pertains to what we're all talking about here in our from our various places in the art, you know, what's that like for you? Like, how do you navigate that? How does it interact with your own life?
I mean, it's a similar thing to what Naveen was talking about. You can have an identity play. You can have an identity piece of music. Early on, one of the pieces that I'm most known for is a piece called Thumbprint, which is about a Pakistani human rights activist. And I very actively tried to write the piece using Hindustani raga and Qawwali music and Bhangra music and a lot of that. And you know, because I wanted to put that on stage. And in the early workshops of that, I had people who were not Indian telling me it didn't sound Indian enough. Where are the microtones? I've been to India. I know this. I'm like, well, I kind of grew up with this, so maybe I know a little bit of it. And I think that you still find it in the sort of orientalizing what the music is supposed to sound like, even though if you listen to contemporary Bollywood, it sounds nothing like what that more exotic Orientalist perspective would be. I've also, I've had people ask me to write things that sound more quote unquote Indian for things that are not Indian stories. And I really believe that music should be used to set a sense of place and character and all of that. And that if it doesn't make sense, then why do it that way? And I think, I'm also a biracial person, and I feel like there is this very strange sort of foot in both worlds thing that you get used to doing, even on top of being a first generation child of immigrants. So I think that has always been something that I have explored in music, and that's one reason why this piece ended up sounding the way that it did, is because in order to capture what that's like, it has to have radically different styles throughout, and it has to show that, yeah, there is one Bhangra inspired number, but the rest are all idiomatic styles that are not necessarily associated with South Indians, like synth pop and jazz and the rock anthem at the end. And a lot of that was also just about showing Angel off and everything that she could do, because I think that we are not in a place of radical inclusivity unless somebody who looks like Angel or looks like Naveen or Zai or even me, unless we can play any character and sing any style of music that we want, then we haven't really gotten there yet.
Can I say just to that, Kamala was very clever and introduced at the top of the jazz number. There's a melody being played in the piano that I play in the piano that is a Filipino folk melody, right? Kamala, is that something that which I didn't recognize, but she was like, I just put that in there in case. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And it like is in the scene. Leaping onto this whole conversation where everyone is saying such great things about the chances that we get or give ourselves, I feel like Naveen and Kamala they really speak to everything that we're talking about right now, and Naveen really successfully, captured. She sort of put the underbelly right there in the she made the subtext text. Of what I've been getting for most of my life, which is like, well, there's this, are you Filipino? Like what Kamala was just talking about, like, well, I may not be Indian, but I'm going to tell you what's more Indian, even though you're actually Indian. And because they may not, maybe it's a visual thing, maybe they look at her and they're not quite sure what to do with her, so they kind of overlook that. And I feel like that's happened with me, and it still happens with me all the time in so many contexts. And just having awareness, number one, like just having an awareness, number one. Number two, not being so presumptuous about what you think you know and what you think another person comes from. Those are two of the main things that need to go along with Zai's radical inclusivity, are radically stepping down from ego and just going, okay, so maybe I'm just going to have to shut up for a second and let some other people talk, you know? So anyway.
I mean, so much of it too, isn't it? We were talking about dual identities, and there's so much of sort of, in my mind as an artist, about negotiating so many paradoxes. How do I really assert my unapologetic control, my point of view into the world, while also being able to listen? It's, you know, how do we confidently step forth and, like Naveen said, we have to be open to making mistakes. And in this particular period of time, where in my life as an artist, it's the first time I've ever heard it questioned, ever, that when a cast breakdown doesn't specify race, that can include all races. That's the first time ever that's happened. We're living in a time where there is this openness, but there is no tolerance for mistakes now. I mean, honestly, there's not. I mean, because, you know, there are more people talking and having an avenue to talk than ever before, and more people interested in listening what they may have to say, but there's very little tolerance for making a mistake, even if there's an appetite to understand. So it's a real tenuous line we're sort of trying to find, because it's great that there's more opportunity to be heard, but it's really the wrong time to be misunderstood. You know, it's the wrong time to make a mistake. And so as artists, I think that puts us in a really interesting place where we have to keep asking questions, and we also have to be the ones being brave enough to make mistakes. Like, we have to be able to put a piece together and in 3 days and be not quite sure and have to get the music out the door, and there's just 9 more things I want to do, you can't do. And we have to risk that way, and to put ourselves on the line and to open ourselves up for being misunderstood, being disagreed with, having what we intended not actually be exactly what we intended, and then having to live with it and discuss it and own it and all that kind of stuff, and to be able to do so in a way that's inclusive of everybody, including the people that, especially the people that might not be understanding us right now, or might not be hearing us in a way that we're so used to not being heard, but they have to be included, really. But is there anything else that anybody wanted to say that hasn't had a chance to bring up? This has been such a fascinating conversation with you all. I'm really so moved and excited by you all, not just by what you created, but by who you are and how you advocate for yourselves and your vision of, you know, because so much of it is point of view. You know, we have to have a point of view in what we do, you know, and clearly at times we're in service of other things. We're in service of someone else's vision. But we must always have a point of view. And, you know, it's so wonderful to see all 5 of your points of view and how you have them and how you use them to work together and how you use them to service, you know, what we need to get done in the world. So thank you for that. Is there anything else you guys would like to say?
The only last thing that I wanted to throw in is just to mention that we had a phenomenal cast of supporting actor musicians who did it all and gave so much to this process. Also, Sean and Brian, our camera team, and the whole resident design and production team that really, like, you know, we were all there 150% for those 3 days to make it happen. And I'm sorry we couldn't fit everyone into this particular scheduling of this Zoom, but there are more great artists involved with this project. So I hope that anyone who's watching this will get to know all of those artists' work as well.
Kudos to you all. Very well done, everybody. Well, thanks so much. Thank you for all of your work and for joining us tonight, and to all the people that are watching, who, I mean, as someone who watched the film myself, I would be so excited to get the chance to hear you talk about what you've been talking about tonight. So thanks for your beautiful work and your artistry.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yay! Happy premiere, everyone. Congratulations on your amazing work. Thanks again to Joel for hosting this wonderful, wonderful discussion.
Bye, guys. Enjoy. Gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.